And welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to GeekWatch, a subsidiary of the monastery, the open bar of the internet. I swear English is my first language.
Are we sure about that?
Great start there, Monk.
I am your one and only gaming monk, better known as Mildra, and with me I have 1, 2, 3 good brothers. Ha 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 ha! We have, making his triumphant return to the watch, our resident observer, good brother Theo.
Hello. I am in a plushy form today, as you can see.
We have the man guiding you through all of your manga dubs, good brother John.
Always good to be here, and yeah, I have a special reason for this one, boys. Be ready.
And our resident folding chairman, good brother Slick Rick.
We're really doing this? We're really
Yes.
doing this?
Yes, we are. We're doing this.
Okay, how many commandments have we broken just to do this again? John, you're going to be doing all the labor work if we get punished.
0. I'm the one who monks double as priest sometimes. If I want to break any commandments, well, I'll just ask Buddha later, and while I'm at it, ask the devil where the hell's my money.
Well, here's the thing. He's not going to give it to you because he's still working at McDonald's.
Yeah, he can barely afford his
or lent it to a guy who lent it to a guy, and he's still waiting until the guy who returns the guy returns the guy.
Yeah. On the other hand, I'll probably end up asking Santa why I'm not getting coal in my stocking.
Because he knows you'll find a way to use it.
Yeah, I've been told that a bit, and what probably doesn't help matters is the fact that I'm friends with an alchemist.
I rest my case.
Yeah, so at this point, coal in your sock is kind of like a gift on its own. So,
Well, have you guys ever heard of the Yankee Special? Also known as the Brooklyn Special.
No, but let's say I have.
You know, baseball in a sock. I think that's
Moving on.
moving right.
Rails.
Moving right
Rails.
along. So, some of you may be looking at this and going, "Wait, what the fuck is this? What the fuck is this? I thought you said you wouldn't touch Megaforce."
before we continue, I have to absolutely make this joke, but with that method the monk proposes, it will be a collateral damage.
Corner now.
Get back in the box. But
Throw a snowball at Theo's face.
Moving on.
But yes, about I want to say a year ago, maybe even less so, when we did Operation Overdrive, I talked about how some of the obvious sounding seasons for Reconstruction I would not touch for various reasons. A lot of them because they either were not bad enough or too bad, and I need a particular middle ground. However, this is not a reconstruction, this is a construction. Therefore, I am technically within my rules.
Yeah, this is where I come in. Because I thought about it for a while, and I agree with Monk that trying to do a reconstruction like the way we normally do would be impossible, because there's too many fundamental flaws with Megaforce for us to truly do a proper reconstruction of the series. But it just seems like such a waste to not talk about this series and find a way to fix the problems, because this was the most disappointing season of Power Rangers in history. Not the worst. We've already covered that with Overdrive. But the most disappointing because it was the 20th anniversary of the franchise. There was so much hype behind this series, in the promotion, in the toy line, everything. And we ended up with, well, that.
Mm-hmm.
I can't get it off my foot. It's stuck.
Now, as far as why things ended up being so bad, there are numerous factors. Now, we've done a postmortem on the Neo Saban era, and certainly Haim Saban has his share of the blame, especially since you have the unholy combination of a network that's averse to spending money and a guy who's averse to spending money.
Though in this case, I don't think that was the fundamental problem. That was just an overlying problem with the Neo Saban era in general.
Yeah.
The real finger needs to be the finger needs to really be pointed at the head producer of this series, one Jonathan Zacher.
Who, I feel like one of these days we're gonna have to dedicate a whole episode to him and give him the roast.
Oh, I'm gonna have a field day that day.
But in lieu of that, I will say that Zacher has been involved in some good series. He was involved with Wild Force, and I actually liked Wild Force. However, I guess you could say Wild Force was the canary in the coal mine that a lot of us didn't realize was gasping until it was too late. Now, bringing him in on paper makes sense. You know, he's somebody who had worked on good seasons, and if you can't get Chip Lind, who basically wrote the book on how to do a proper season, getting him isn't too bad on paper. Now, note that I said...
Keyword on paper.
Yes. Because there was one big problem that he definitely showcased during the Wild Force days, as well as later works, that reared his ugly head here because he didn't have anybody to yank the leash. In a very Vince Russo kind of way. You know, Vince Russo is perfectly fine as long as there's somebody to yank the leash to keep him from doing the really, really stupid decisions.
Yeah, that's
WCW in its worst years.
Hi, TNA,
sure
how you
Frank
doing?
Miller is also one of those.
Say again, Theo?
Pretty sure Frank Miller is one of those as well.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Holy terror, anyone?
With Frank Miller, I will give Frank Miller one bit of credit regarding that and some of his other blunders. He owns those. Like, when it comes to Holy Terror, he's like, yeah, I did it. I'm not going to apologize. It fucked up and it's on me. I was trying to do something akin to the propaganda comics of the 50s, and it didn't work. So that doesn't excuse how much of a shit Holy Terror was, but when so many people in creative positions have a tendency to try and pass off the buck to someone else, you know, Vince Russo saying, the last rights thing wasn't my idea, it was Dutch Mantel's idea, and Dutch Mantel's like, fuck you, it was.
I think I'm going to trust Dutch Mantel on that one.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Like, when he was asked about it, he basically said, and I quote, bullshit. 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 And but I can at least give somebody their due if they're willing to own up for their own mistakes. So I'll give him a pass on that at least. You know, Devil getting his due and all that. But getting back on the rails, Zacher's big problem, and I know how this is gonna sound, but work with me on this, is him being a massive fan of the original Sentai. Now,
You're not wrong.
we're all fans of the Sentai here, so one might say, well, why is that a problem? Because he couldn't see the bigger picture.
That's true, actually.
Yeah,
Often seeing trees but not seeing the forest does lead to a lot of complications.
Yeah, the thing with Zacher was, yes, he was a fan of the Sentai, but he was, as YGM put it in the chat, in the YouTube chat, a bit of a purist in that regard. And you could see the problems with that with Samurai, where instead of trying to create something that would better fit an American audience, he literally just tried to recreate the Sentai with American actors. The story was the same, a lot of the characters were the same, even though the situation was so vastly different that it didn't click, it didn't fit together. And it created a lot of problems.
Like, to bounce off of that, like, one thing that he forgot, and this is something that most people, like, I want to give credit to this. A lot of those bad manga adaptations that have been done to the West, for the most part, there's some they're excluding on this. They understand that they can't do one for one if they throw it in a random American city, because the culture of the countries are completely different. There is very little you can do.
Yeah, trying to do a Japanese culture story, one that is so steeped in Japanese culture, but yet still trying to do it in an American city with American ideals, was doomed to fail.
And I had said from the word go, I would have, if I was in that position, I wouldn't have used Samurai, period. I wouldn't have used Shinkenja.
Unfortunately, at the time, that was like one of the. I think that was the one everyone expected.
Mm-hmm. But but in regards to Megaforce, this shouldn't have been that shouldn't have even been an issue, because again, we had this. There's the bigger problem with Megaforce, and where Zacher's influence really fucked up, is he was forced to adapt 2 different Sentai seasons into one, because and this has been a long-standing belief, and while it's never been outright confirmed, or at least I think it hasn't been like openly confirmed, it's relatively an open secret that up until Megaforce, they had a rule that you had to follow, Toei had a rule that they had to use every Sentai season. They couldn't skip anything.
Mm-hmm.
After Megaforce, they jumped ahead, and I think Toei realized we kind of need to lighten up on that rule. But that's the problem. They wanted to do the anniversary, but they had this other season getting in the way that they had to use. So they said, "Fuck it, let's put them together."
I think the thing that probably accelerated that mindset was the fact that, you know, the original Mighty Morphin run was Frankenstein together 3 different seasons of Super Sentai. So I'm not using that as an excuse. I'm saying I could see the mindset of, well, we did something close to that back in the day. We can do that again, because a lot of the Neo Saban era, and this is something we talked about in that episode, was very much trying to capture the very early seasons in a way that comes off like a cargo cult.
Yeah. That was you could see that a lot in the fact that they tried to reuse the opening theme. They tried to remake Go-Go Power Rangers. They tried to make a lot of callbacks in terms of casting. I mean, they brought back Paul Schreier as Bulk for Samurai. They tried to do they used a lot of the same calls and everything like that. They tried to do a lot of references to the old days in Samurai, and it didn't work, because then they also tried to add in the Shinkenger related material. And we kind of see that more in Megaforce. Again, a lot of callbacks, a lot of references that didn't mesh well with the story they were supposedly trying to tell, though calling it a story would be a misnomer, because quite frankly there was no story.
Yeah, I think there is also a problem just from a perspective of someone who like only watched Sentai and like a little bit of Power Rangers, not a lot. There is a big gap in identity and vibes, I would say, between what Sentai was and what Power Rangers became, and trying to adapt one to another, when Power Rangers as a whole has already established its own identity, its own kind of like memes, so to say, how it's supposed to do, how it's like, how it goes, how it does things. So deviating from that on an anniversary is kind of like a recipe for disaster on its own.
Mhm. And
Yeah. Now, sorry. Go ahead.
the reason I use the analogy of a cargo cult is, the old cargo cults in underdeveloped places that were getting foreign assistance, and then that assistance stopped. But a lot of the locals saw the assistance that they got as assistance from the gods or something like that, and they would imitate the appearance of a runway, thinking that they could summon the planes without understanding how things actually worked. There was a lot of stuff in the Neo Saban era that was very much the product of misunderstanding what drew people to the franchise to begin with. Like, people really like the fighting, so let's have more fighting in it, without realizing that that was only part of the equation. And trying to figure out what the, for lack of a better term, secret sauce is never going to be an easy thing to do. But it's very easy to do the wrong things with it, and hence Cargo Cult. Now, the final thing to note is when it comes to when is the fact that obviously trying to do this anniversary thing and trying to replicate the legendary battle that had made waves all across the internet at the time was going to be a logistical nightmare, and there's plenty of stories about trying to fly people out to New Zealand who were in the States or elsewhere, and the fact that, well, even I think there was an infamous Den of Geek article where even just deviating from the plan was met with shock and horror.
Yeah, there was talk that basically certain aspects that they were trying to change. Apparently, Zacher was dead set, and he knew what he wanted to create out of this, even though it was far different from anything they'd done before. And anyone who tried to change it was like, "No, are you kidding me? You can't do that."
Yeah, something that I've talked about in the past is slavish adaptation more often than not leads to disaster. And in worst case scenarios, you have things like, say, Gus Van Sant's attempt to do a shot-for-shot remake of Psycho.
Yeah.
Or... But a better example, and one that I've used a lot, is Cormac MacArthur attempting to... Cormac MacArthur's theatrical version of The Road. Because the book itself is very atmospheric, but you can't really do 90% atmosphere with a 2-hour film.
Yeah, you can't.
I mean, you can, you're just gonna end up with a long, slow, boring film where not much happens. And
Yeah.
And like if you were to do that as like a 30-minute short film, you could probably get away with that. But 2 hours where not a whole lot happens, no. And it's a case where you have to understand what you're adapting and how. John, I know you and I have talked at length about certain jokes in Japanese that just will not work in English.
Oh yeah, plenty of times.
Like, I think that's part of the reason why the numerous attempts to try and do another American adaptation of Kamen Rider end up going nowhere. Like, there was that Power Rider concept that was put in as a trademark a few years back, but nothing came of it.
Yeah, there's a very each honestly each culture has its own kind of a specific thing to it that really is hard to translate. So just as any other adaptation, I feel like there should be always some sort of authorial changes in order to even if some people don't like it, like purists and whatever, to make sense. Because you could say all you want, like you're translating like anime and not change a thing about it. And imagine trying to translate a Japanese pun in English without doing any translation. It's just like ha 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 ha, skewer, skewer buddy, ha 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 ha. What did he say? What the fuck is this about?
Yeah, exactly.
You know what's my ultimate example of that kind of problem, and why why I was confident in saying this anime will never be dubbed. Sayonara Zetsubo Sensei.
Oh god, yeah. That series lives and breathes on Japanese double entendres. Not the sexual kind, just straight up double meanings of all of their language. How a name can be translated two different ways depending on just the orientation of the word.
Oh, the main character, the reason he has his nickname is because if you write his name horizontally instead of vertically like he insists, one of the characters you get is Zetsubo.
Yeah.
And every single character had some sort of nickname pun in it.
Yeah.
And if I had to use a non-Japanese example of this kind of thing, I feel bad anytime somebody tries to translate, say, one of the Metro books or Roadside Picnic. Just because there's a lot of stuff that's going to get lost in translation. And I like both of them. But it's one of those things that a lot of people, especially purists, when they argue for purism, tend to skip out on the bigger picture. And to bring this back to Zacher, a lot of the this has been pointed out, but a lot of the way he would write dialogue has the problem of what happens when you translate Japanese dialogue to English, because you're keeping the same flow, for lack of a better term, in Japanese that doesn't quite work with how English speaking works. You know,
I studied Japanese myself, so I can tell that they have very not really flowing way of speaking, but they also have a lot of quirks that you may add into your language and way of speaking as a way of adding more identity. It's often utilized as a sort of accent, quote unquote, within anime and TV shows, and that stuff will simply not translate, because like if you have just a blatant example in Naruto, where the titular character Naruto has a lot of parasite words that mean nothing. Like datebayo doesn't mean anything. Doesn't mean anything, literally. So how do you translate that current like one-to-one? You don't. You simply cannot do that.
They tried adding believe it for a
anything.
few episodes and then dropped it.
Yeah.
Or God help you, how you do the American equivalent of, say, a Kansai bad accent. Or how
Exactly.
somehow Osaka accents have been translated as Southern accents, basically.
I mean, that's funny. So.
I mean, it's understandable why. It's just kind of amusing.
It is.
Yeah.
It is.
But given all of that, since we are dealing with a massive disappointment, it does have, as John had pointed out, have a lot of fertile soil for exploration. So, with that in mind, I believe you have a certain button to hit before we go in.
Yes, indeed, because I think it's time for us to take a crack at this. So, as in the words of Adam Blumpier,
Let me have a go.
So, I will note, right as soon as John had pitched this idea, him and I had a bit of back and forth to kind of narrow down the net. Because otherwise, this is when it comes to doing a full-on construction, this is a very wide net. This is why I have that insistence on an angle. And fortunately, I had written down a few bullet points that we had set up, and we'll get into them as we go in. But one of the key things we're doing right out of the gate is all of that Ghost Sager based stuff that was in there early on. We're picking that up and into the trash it goes.
Yeah. Just get that one season out. We need to focus on the one single. Yeah, on a single
we're gonna
season.
Go on the
of Sentai.
assumption that we talk with Toei and say, I don't care what the rule is, we're skipping Ghost Sager. It is useless for us. We're dumping it.
If I was in the meeting room, I would just lock the door and say, I'm not leaving and you're not leaving until we get Gokaiger and nothing else.
I think I would have utilized the what's the producer of Final Fantasy 14 name? I keep forgetting.
Yoshi-P.
Yoshi-P. What Yoshi-P did, Yoshi-P approached the higher ups when he was remaking 14 and said, we can do either this, which is shit, or we can do this. You choose.
Like, if I have to lock myself in a room with a bunch of executives and say, I'm not leaving and I can be here for days if need be. I brought snacks, you didn't.
Pulls out a giant bento.
We will go. Mr. Smith goes to Washington on your ass.
Yeah. But
I think objectively, if you explain the higher ups the reason why you want to do this, I don't think there will be much of a fuss.
Yeah, but at the same time, also you never know. You might have those traditionalists because keep in mind Japan.
yeah, it's more of if you're going to be doing that sort of hardcore negotiating, you have to show some degree of strength, basically saying, this is the line, I'm not backing down from this. If you want to get me to back down, you're going to have to throw hands. And
True, yeah, you have to be strong on the negotiations and establish a very strong position.
yeah.
That's fair.
Now, the other reason that I do this is, one, it would be the season that would be the most fitting. It's an anniversary piece. This is also an anniversary piece.
Yeah.
The other thing is, on both sides of the pond, from what I recall and my cursory research, Ghost Sager was not very well received. It wasn't massively negatively received, but it's definitely on the low end of that time period.
Our buddy Easy Writer did a review of Ghost Sager many years ago, and yeah, it wasn't the worst season of Sentai out there, but it definitely had its flaws. It definitely had a few issues. It was kind of boring, really.
Yeah, from what I remember about that season myself, because I watched them like not live, but like close to live, and talked to a few Japanese friends. The worst part about this season is that nobody really remembered what happened there. It's kind of like you watch it and it just kind of floats outside of you. Like, I don't remember what happened there.
The word you would use there. It's very
Like,
forgettable.
Yeah.
I might put a pause on this and like I want to build on that. Like, let's look at the 4 seasons leading up to Gokaiger. If we could basically describe each season in some way, how will we describe it, like, as a summarization? Like Jiki Ranger, what would it be? If we could summarize it in a way that best describes it, what would it be?
Spiritual Kung Fu.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay. Go on, Jer.
Cars.
Cars with souls.
I would say Cars with Souls with a Go Green message that worked.
Oh yeah.
And then Shikinger.
Period drama in Sentai form.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. That's
What about Ghost Sager? What could be the best way to summarize it besides boring?
Angels against multiple
Rookie
threats.
Angels against, yeah, against both.
Honestly, I
threats.
kind of struggled to like figure out how to like lower it down genuinely. I'm like thinking,
Yeah,
I think the lacking identity definitely played into how.
They tried to have
Yes.
it was supposed to be Rookie Angels, but the problem is the problem with Ghost Sager as a whole was the multiple villain factions. There was no, like, even with other season with multiple villain factions, there was usually a direct underlying threat or a connecting line between all of them. The only connecting line in Ghost Sager was one guy.
Yeah.
With Bokenger, you had multiple factions, but it was all centered around Precious.
Yeah, it's like they were all acting at the same time. They would interact with each other, which was a good thing for the character development. But they're all after the same goal. Ghost Sager, they all have their own separate agendas. They, other than Braidrun or Brudgera, there is no connecting factors. Like, they only have the same ideas for domination or destruction or whatever.
And because of the fact that you're trying to establish 3 villain factions back to back to back, none of them have any room to breathe. Like when you don't have unlike a novel, you don't have infinite amount of time with a television show. Even if, say, a Sentai season is going to be longer than, say, an anime season, since it's going to be 50 episodes instead of 26, give or take a few. I know, but with doing that, you're splitting the amount of time budget that you have 3 ways, and you don't need to do that.
And actually, not even 3 ways, technically 4, because once those 3 villain factions were dealt with, Barajira took over as the final big bad, and he kind of came into his own thing for like the last 5 or 6 episodes.
Fair.
Yep.
So that's technically 4 different factions going on here.
And that's also the reason why I think ultimately Megaforce, from what my little reminding research to myself, what happened here is they ended up having the most ADHD-like faction of evil bad guys you can possibly have. You look at the designs and they make absolutely no sense together in places.
Yeah, with Megaforce, they not only had to split it up into 2 seasons with Megaforce and Super Megaforce, but because now you have the introduction of the Armada, aka the Zangief Empire, they had 5 villain factions.
Yeah.
At the very least,
Doesn't
like
work.
1, maybe 2 can be grouped together for 1 season. The other 3 they have to put in a single season, and no.
You don't see multiple villain factions across multiple tokusatsu for a very good reason. Because when you're doing that, you are spinning plates while Saber Dance is playing in the background.
Yeah.
And this is the reason why I will always be why a lot of us here will always be a fan of Riku Sanjo and his insistence on working with a smaller cast overall.
Yeah.
Even though Toei kept giving him bigger casts, but that's a story we've already told.
Mm-hmm.
Though I will give Zacher credit for being able to make Brock, as they ended up calling him, aka Barajira, a member of the Armada. Basically the son of the Emperor, because he does have a look that's very similar enough that you could slot him in and make it fit, but that was just their only way of making sure that he fit in the overall narrative, and it still didn't quite work. He was still kind of his own entity outside of everything else.
Now, with that said, we've already established Go Sagers out. We would only be using the footage from Go Kaiser. Now, this was where we get to one other thing: the name. A name like Megaforce tells you nothing, and ever since arguably Zeo, there's been a thing of the name telling you something about what you're going to be dealing with. mean, Zeo was a bit of a stretch, but I can definitely say since Turbo, the name is inferring something about the subject matter. And once we got to the Disney era, that was definitely the case.
Yeah.
And Megaforce doesn't follow that. It doesn't tell you anything. There's also the fact that it has the same name as a random ass TV series from the 80s, but that's another matter entirely.
Lord knows any old school reviewer, both Easy and Linkara, both made a reference to the 80s Megaforce series in their reviews of this show.
Oh yeah, for sure.
So that name's got to go.
Yeah. Like looking at the just a lineup of names for Power Ranger seasons, I opened up on my side screen here. Like you can just recognize exactly what it's about by looking at the name. What is Power Rangers Time Force about? About a Time Force.
A lot of people involving time travel, even though there really wasn't that much time travel.
Jungle Fury, Samurai, like you can tell Dino Charge. You can definitely tell the vibe. It could Dino Fury, Beast something, Super Ninja Steel, Cosmic Fury. You can tell a lot of things about what the name is. Meanwhile, Megaforce, what is it about? It's a force
It's the most
that is mega.
So, Monk and I sat down with this when we first were hashing this idea out, and it took us a few tries, but we came down with a name that I think really represents, one, it captures the pirate theme, which is something that I think, contrary to what Linkara says, the pirate theme is so in your face with this one, you can't ignore it.
We'll get to that in detail, because I'll have some things to say about that.
Yeah, you and I both. You and I both, sir. But we did find a name that fits both the anniversary style with all of the legendary Rangers and the fact that they're a group of pirates in their design. So we went with the name Power Rangers Legendary Voyagers.
There were a few other names I had considered, but other fiction writers had beaten me to the punch. So this was the... And I will notice a minor thing. If I was producing, I would have said, we're not doing that whole thing of remixing Go-Go Power Rangers for the umpteenth time. We're not doing that.
You have to include it somewhere in the theme, specifically because it's an anniversary, but it should not just be Go-Go Power Rangers.
Yeah. I'm not even sure if I do my best to try and replicate the original kind of scoring period. I mean, maybe a few nods.
There should be some sort of jingle or like insertion of it, like a callback to the series.
Like maybe have like a little bit of the riff. Like when I think of a callback of this kind, it's slightly off. I know, but when Zenkaiser had the themes for their mechs, the mech for 2 Kaiser, there was a little bit of a riff in there that sounded very similar to the riff they would have in O Ranger. So I would say something along that line for the Power Rangers.
That might be perfectly fine.
And also, at this point, if you're going to do the anniversary thing, shell out the money and get motherfucking Ron Wasserman for this thing.
Pretty much, instead of getting...
Fuck Noam Keneal. Straight up. Fuck Noam Keneal.
Yeah,
if not Ron Wasserman, like someone else who has a good history with this franchise.
Yeah.
But now, since we brought that up, yes, we would be very much doubling down on that theming of pirates. And because fortunately, pirates is something that's going to be a bit more universal than, say, samurai.
Yeah.
Now, this is where I have to call out one particular comment that Linkara had made during his history of Power Rangers regarding Megaforce, where he said the subject matter theme of the footage is not important. One, I can call several shades of bullshit to that, and two, even you, Linkara, you, Lewis, undermined your own point. And I remember his argument of being centered around the whole ancient ninja electric guitar. Which, I can see the point there. They turned what was a shamisen originally into a guitar. I would counter that the closest American equivalent instrument to a shamisen would be a banjo, and that would sound ridiculous.
Yes. So
Imagine.
your argument there was sound, but here's the difference. The season that you reference was Ninja Storm, a series where the entire season was centered around them being from a secret ninja academy.
Mm-hmm.
And everything around the costumes, the set design, the story was centered around ninjas. So you kind of argued against your own point there, sir.
Yeah, it's thematic. Like,
There's
just
also...
looking at this whole thing of like Megaforce. Sorry, I interrupted you. This whole thing of Megaforce, they clearly look piratey, like
Yeah,
on the
they have a skull and crossbones as their main symbol, even though it's a slightly variation of it. It's supposed to look like a skull and crossbones.
Mm-hmm.
They're wearing a pirate jacket. They are wielding cutlasses and blunderbusses. You can't ignore their main mech is a freaking pirate ship.
Yeah.
Everything around their aesthetic is built around the pirate theme. You can't
the fact that
ignore
it's not
that.
leaned into at all, it makes it seems like it's just some kids playing dress ups instead of like, warriors or something.
Yeah.
It doesn't feel thematic at all.
The other reason I said, and I do remember ranting about this with you, John, that he undermines it. That not only does he undermine his own point, I was like, you don't even believe that. Is cast your mind to that rant he had regarding the transition from Zeo to Turbo.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, if it's that easy for me to undermine your argument is shit. And
Yeah, it is.
It's times like these that I love using Hitchin's razor. Extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence, and that which is asserted without evidence can be dismissed without evidence. And when it comes to the name, that was one of the things that had to be established. And I'm not saying that it has to 100% literally delve into pirates. We're not having them be on this ship like this is a One Piece affair. Although I will invoke One Piece in the sense of why the pirate thing would be far more universal, because even at this time, One Piece was still a dominant force. Plus we were coming off of the Pirates movies, the only 3 movies in that trilogy. So it's not like Pirates were somehow out of the public consciousness in the States, or internationally for that matter.
Yeah, you could have easily pulled this off, and I guarantee you would have done gangbusters if they had leaned in on it.
So, whereas obviously with something like Samurai, you have a bit of difficulty with that because Samurai didn't catch on in the 80s like ninjas did. But you don't have that problem with Pirates. There's swashbuckling stuff in the public consciousness going back almost a century. I could reach all the way back to the days of Errol Flynn if I wanted to.
Yeah.
But because of that, I'm like, we're gonna be dipping into that. So let's lean into that. But also lean into the more science fiction-y / space opera elements that we saw with Gokaiger. That can just as easily transfer. And that brings me to the initial premise. Now, the idea that I had pitched was that there was partially inspired by a rule of 3 that Filmento has established in some of his videos, which I do recommend Filmento. He's really, really good at breaking down why certain movies succeed or fail. I do disagree with him when he said Dune was a dystopian future. It's not. It's not exactly utopian, but it's not a cyberpunk dystopia, which he was trying to argue. But he brought up that a good plot requires 3 things: goal, stakes, urgency. And when it comes to the villain faction, we can easily have that not calling it the Armada, but something akin to Imperium or something like that. With no disrespect to Gunther, I do not want to get chopped.
Here's one thing I would argue as a minor detail. Do not use Sentai footage for the enemy. Because, let's be honest, Warsgiru was not a good villain. Even in the Sentai, he was a terrible villain.
He was the spoiled prince archetype, which
Yes.
even then,
That was one of the weak points of Gokaiger. Fight me on that. I dare you. Nobody likes Warsgiru.
You're
I
not
still
really wrong.
I still remember the episode with the Sneak Brothers.
Yeah.
So, let's dump Warsgiru now. You have 2 options. Either way, it's going to require original footage. If you want to keep some aspect of the Sentai stuff, you can make the Emperor the main villain from the get-go. Or you can have an original person take over as the prince. And have it be a little more serious.
I would much rather go with a prince, and let me explain why.
Yeah, there is a certain pace to it, I would say, with like villain, prince, then emperor kind of thing.
Yeah.
May I let me, Monk, before you give your suggestion, may I give my suggestion?
Go ahead.
So, we brought up earlier how Thrad was written in the original to be a son of the Armada. Let's keep that and have him be the one we see throughout the show. And not war skills, we still can use footage of him, but they're the same character. We see he was Wars, but then got exiled or something and turned into what would appear as Rajara.
I don't see a reason to do that, because, like I said, any of the Ghost Sager stuff is tossed out the window. Like that bridge is not burned. That bridge is blown the fuck up.
I get you, but at the same time, it's like, given how later on they would be using a lot of stuff. They were using the monsters generals from ToQger and anything afterwards. That's where I was coming up with the idea. So we would.
I get where you're coming. Here's what I would suggest. We can use the costume, but we need to make new footage and give him a new personality to not make him as spoiled. Because you still need to have some comedy there. You need to have some levity.
Yep.
But he doesn't need to be a spoiled brat.
I would say almost Zuko, kind of.
Kind of Zuko, but he needs to be a lot more serious. Where he like when things go wrong, when he fails, when his crew fails, he gets angry, he gets pissed off, but he doesn't get petulant. He just gets angry.
So here's what I was thinking. This is somebody who is a imperial prince, and what we would mostly be seeing is his detachment. And the reason why I'd want to go with that is to reinforce that even this vast collection of ships is just one small piece of the might that the Imperium can bring to bear. Much in this.
Yeah, it would be much more showy of the Armada's power if seeing them lose, like this stuff lose, he would not really care.
But
like maybe, yeah.
When it comes to, I would have Bacchus still be a prince, but
yeah,
I would. I would go with the idea that when it comes to the people in line for the throne, he's on the lower end of it, and conquering is his way of saying, I can be just as good. You know, his way of trying to rise up the ranks. Because if we're dealing with an imperial family, we have to deal with imperial politics.
Indeed. Have him be somebody who doesn't care because he figures, oh, this will be easy. This is just another. This planet is weak. It's defenseless. It's pointless. But as the series goes on and he keeps losing, he gets more and more agitated. Why can't I conquer this weak, endless, hopeless planet? What is going on here?
Yeah.
I'm tempted to say have him be like and pardon my French, a bastard son. Like he's doing all this to prove something, and
I don't think that's a detail that'd be necessary. Just that
It's like a kid show.
Yeah,
This-
usually
that's why I said
being
pardon
like
my French.
fifth in line. Yeah, being like fifth in line to the crown, to the throne is plenty, you know. Most of
Yeah.
most of the fifth princes never even see the cape of a crown prince. Never.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's not even
just
like-
have him be
it's-
low end on the totem pole, and have him feel like he's done this for so long because he's to prove himself, and he figures, oh, this will just be another conquest to add to my collection to show that I am worthy of the crown. But then he finds out, oh, this planet is actually able to protect itself. What the fuck?
Yeah, I think the approach I'd go with, and this now, given that side of things, when it comes to what the goal is, I would say that within Earth there is a master. This is what I had suggested, a kind of master key to the Morphin Grid, the equivalent of a skeleton key, and obviously our cast, I would still keep with the idea of them being people on the run, or people who have been screwed over in some manner by the Imperium, much like how it was in Gokaiger. The main thing I would change is that going on what you had mentioned about, oh, this is just some backwater planet, they end up learning the hard way that Earth has some degree of layered defense. I.e., if you because of how many times Earth has been invaded, there's been inroads made over the years to try and put some sort of defenses against outer terrestrial threats. But as I said, it's a layered defense system. And the Voyagers, the Rangers, and the Armada get caught in a battle. One ends up managing to get down to the planet because their ship is small enough to get through a gap. But the Gigant Force and the rest of the ships are stuck in high orbit. They're stuck in high atmo. They can't. If they leave, the defenses there will end up catch them and blow them to bits. If they try and get closer, then that layer of defenses will lock in on them and also blow them to bits. So they're stuck.
All they can do is send small ships and monsters down to sneak past the defenses.
To hopefully disable some of those defenses so that they could, take care of the planet and then get the hell out.
And this is where we start tying things back. First of all, the fact that we're even bringing up the morphing grid was something that they didn't even touch upon in Megaforce, which dumb fucking move. Don't celebrate the anniversary of the series without bringing up one of the most critical elements of the franchise.
Mm-hmm.
Nice job there, Zacher. Secondly, something that was hinted at the first episode of Megaforce that never really went anywhere. Let this be a defense system developed by Zordon.
I would
Maybe not.
a combination of Zordon, Nasada, and several of the other organizations that we've seen over the years.
I was going to say, because like when you first mentioned that, I was thinking the defense group. I wasn't thinking Zoran. I was thinking the rebel forces or so from in space.
You have it, yeah.
Maybe,
KO-35, Have Zordon have started the idea, but then
Yeah, maybe
have
Zordon really started the idea, and then every other like big organization kind of iterated and added to it, so we could make callbacks to like all of the seasons in some way or form.
Well,
Yeah,
and then
you
we
can
don't-
have some the guys from people from Time Force involved. You can have Lightspeed Rescue involved. You could have Tommy Oliver, considering how much research he's done over the years, have helped to develop some things. Because you gotta get Tommy in there somewhere.
Yeah, and on top of that, it's like even if nothing else, we can use this as a basis for visual references of logos from like those facilities. Like have something a TerraVenture logo, or maybe like a sponsorship from like the Surf Shack, from that type of stuff.
Yeah, it's anniversary. I feel like it's forgiving. You can forgive several moments in the story, or visual cues, or references, or audio cues
Yeah,
where
if
people
you
go,
can't get-
ah.
If you can't get returning cast members, the next best thing you can do is make direct callbacks that fit with the current narrative. That's the key to a callback. It has to tie into what the story is that you're telling.
mhm.
That's what
Actually,
made
I have an
Beast
example
Morphers
of
work,
that.
was that they tied
Actually,
things
example of
into
that
the past.
of a foreign thing. I recently played a game. It's a gacha game. That's my specialty. It's called Girls Frontline 2. Probably heard about it.
Yes.
Right.
I've heard of that one.
The
yeah.
thing is, the thing is, the game itself is a sequel to the first game. And how they chose to approach it is that it's been 10 years, and there's always these vague, non-concrete, non-spoilery way people talk to each other that you just sort of know that they have history, and that should be the sort of feeling that people have experiencing like watching this big anniversary show of a big show where someone talks about something. Make it vague enough to not be spoiler, but also have enough of a reference in it so that people who know go,
Yeah.
Actually, I have an idea for the name of the program, or at least what everyone refers to it as, the Hexagon.
Oh, that's a neat one.
Well,
What Rick's doing is referencing a long-forgotten attempted pilot for Ninja Storm
mhm.
that was originally written by Amit Bhamick, that was going to be his idea for Ninja Storm. That fell through because it was too much original footage, too much recurring cast members. It was going to be a nightmare to try to produce when Disney was literally trying to cut everything down to minimal.
Yeah.
Yeah. Not to mention the big. It is kind of funny in hindsight to see Disney trying to not spend money, given the recent events over the last few years. But Given-
the irony of it all.
given that, I think one of the themes that we'd have with the core 5, not with these 6, we're not covering that yet, would be that they have in some way been screwed over or on the run, and have been a pest to the Imperium, to the point where every single one of the core 5 has a multi-million whatever currency bounty on their heads. Like the kind of bounty that would be a reason why people would want to try and pursue them, because if they turn that bounty in, they're going to be set for life.
Yeah, and one thing that we also suggested is that all of these Voyagers, all of these Rangers, are going to be from planets that we have heard about in the franchise in the past. We can have a representative from Marinoi, KL35. Hell, let's throw a twist in there. Let's throw in one from Edenoi.
So,
I have
given
one also.
given that, I'd like to nail down for each, and kind of nail down how we'd handle the personality for each of the core 5, since there wasn't much in the way of personality in the core, so we have a lot of wiggle room to work with.
I have one for the red, and it's just because, and I think it would fit in a way be fitting. Have him be from Onyx.
I was actually going to go with Eltar.
I get that, but
Yeah.
it was announced originally throughout the whole thing that Onyx is basically the worst of the worst place in the galaxy. And if for someone like him, the captain, if he's on the run from not just the Empire but all these other pretty bad forces, what would that mean?
Well, all of them.
How about this as a compromise?
Good.
Have him be from Eltar, but have him start to form his crew on Onyx.
Ooh.
And that's where, he's been on the run for quite a while now. Because he was probably one of the first places the Imperium attacked. So he's been on the run for a while, and he landed on Onyx and came up with the idea of forming this group of runaways. Because a lot of these guys would have run to Onyx originally because they wouldn't have thought to go to Earth.
Mm-hmm.
Well, to them, probably Earth is like a backwater country.
Not all of them.
Backward,
People, Miranoi, I think.
Miranoi
Miran.
Go ahead.
I think what we could do is have the last of the five be from Miranoi, and have them suggest Earth because their family used to be from Earth.
So I would say,
I think you're getting ahead.
Yeah.
Eyes bigger.
Yeah, I'm just trying to get an idea of what we're doing
Yeah.
with this. Let's get to the personalities.
But
yeah, the Red should be from Eltar, and that's why he's the leader, because he's somebody who's from that kind of civilization, someone where, Zordon's homeworld.
Mm-hmm.
So they're more advanced, more understanding, more knowledgeable about not only technology and weaponry, but also the morphing grid itself.
yeah, he does understand it. It's just that when it comes to his one of the big motifs, as Zan has pointed out in the past, is the relationship of the red and blue Oni. And I would say he is somebody who can come up with the bigger picture when it comes to plans. But our Noah in this case is someone who's able to figure out the step-by-step part of those plans. But both of them kind of need each other when it comes to setting up the plan. Since in Gokaiger, Joe was very much the loyal right hand to Marvelous, even with the tension that they would have at times. He's much more akin to the dragon's right eye in Sengoku Basara.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like let's face it, he was the core three, Marvelous, Luca, and Joe. They weren't like do they have their moments of planning? Yes, but at the same time, they were more so gung-ho, we'll figure it out as we go along. They weren't the plan type. That was the other three.
Yeah,
that's where we're going to deviate a little bit.
Yeah.
Because blue is going to be and this is where I would suggest that our blue is going to be from KO-35.
Yeah.
Because they have dealt with that kind of stuff before, considering, again, in space, they've retrained themselves to be a little more military focused, not fully, but enough that they're ready for another in battle like that if it ever happens again.
Mm-hmm.
So they're going to be more detail oriented.
Yeah, I can go with that.
Hell, have it that Blue was personally trained by Andros.
I like that, having actual callbacks, like they have a history with a specific ranger.
Uh-huh.
I have one request, and it's either for our yellow or green. Have them be from Aquitar.
Yeah,
The only problem with that is that they would actually, there's a way around this. Have them be the child of Billy and the Aquatarian that he mated with.
Yes.
So that way they can keep them being a human character and not have to be a full Aquatarian, because otherwise the makeup would be a nightmare to deal with.
I'm not even saying that. It's like I'm saying they're from there, but they may not be entirely Aquitar. For all we know, they could have been adopted, or they were stranded there. They went to Aquitar.
See, here's the problem with that. Aquitar is an entirely underwater planet. They can't do that.
yeah. It would have.
Okay.
And if I'm going by that, the green tends. I know a lot of people associate green with Tommy, but greens in a lot of seasons tend to be the idea guy, the unorthodox type. Bridge is a good example. And to that end, I would say that our Green, our Jake in this case, is from Triforia.
Ooh.
From Triforia, and has a bit of a habit of arguing with his other selves at times. Or debating with his other selves.
I think
That
like
does sound amusing.
yeah. Oh yeah. And
So,
Then in this case, since I'd already hinted at this, now the problem is, yeah, we have to have our pink be from Miranoi because we haven't. Well, no, yellow could be from Miranoi.
yeah, I
did we
can
know
go
if
with that.
Maya? Did we know if she could be one of the children that would be playing with Maya? Given how we were seeing Maya in Lost Galaxy, would spend her days like basically taking care of kids.
That would make sense. Yeah, have her tied with that, and then also we could have the final one for our pink. Keep that whole princess vibe that I'm used to have.
Mhm.
Have her be a newer princess of Edenoi.
I'd be willing to go with that.
I mean, slapping a gem on her head won't be that difficult of a prosthetic to add, so we could still do that whole thing.
Yeah, I would say that she's definitely in that, though. I don't have any. Though, I know that with these, there's the awkward thing with the Gokaiger footage of the one time, Decade had an appearance, which
We're not using that.
if we want to cheat and use that, that's one inroad that we can have. But that's a big if.
We don't have to do that. We could easily skip that one. You could get away with skipping an episode or two.
Yeah. But when it comes to our sixth, who was Orion in Super Megaforce, this is where we'd have the exception of him being the sole one from Earth.
Probably like grew up either.
We actually
family
talked
in
about this.
Defense.
We actually talked about this, and this was something this was something that we had pitched, since we had. If obviously trying to get a bunch of guests from previous seasons is a big ask. A little bit less so with some of the Disney era cast, because they're going to be in New Zealand anyways. But Orion in this case is the student of Tommy. Tommy had been fighting the good fight for years, and he was well aware of the fact that he can only do this for so long. He was getting up there in years. So, as lame as the whole "I was running a dojo" thing was in Once a Ranger, let's flip that on his head. That was all part of one big setup to find a successor, somebody who could carry the fight when he wouldn't be able to anymore. And when he spotted Orion, which I'm not even sure if I'd even go with that name, he had been training him for years. He has an understanding of how the morphing grid works. He has an understanding of how to fight. He can hold his own against plenty. Even with having less experience fighting Imperium, he's had plenty of time training. He would be the most well trained coming into this. His issue is that there's the whole thing of living up to the legacy of somebody who's considered the best to ever do it, but also not having a lot of book smarts on the matter, but not necessarily street smarts. I know Dragon said trained by Billy too. I would not have gone. We're not going with that because Billy's on Aquitar, so there's no way he could have done that.
Well, actually, little future knowledge here. We could start setting things up in motion for down the road and have Billy have already returned to Earth. But he could have, or at the very least, passed on like a database, because we're gonna need to have a database of Harass Ranger history for them to access at some point, especially with what we've got planned for this. Have him have created a database of Ranger knowledge and set all that up, and have him be the one that has studied it the most.
Yeah.
So,
and this brings up a concept that we had accidented ourselves into when we had our earlier discussion. It's time. I think it's high time, John, that we talk about the concept of grid diving.
so allow me to try to explain what we came up with here, because this is an interesting idea. Because, as I mentioned earlier, one of the things that really pissed people off about Megaforce is that despite it being an anniversary season, they didn't bring up one of the quintessential aspects of the franchise, which is the morphing grid. It is a major part. Even RPM, being in an alternate universe, created its own version of the morphing grid. How did Megaforce ignore this? So we're going to do the opposite. We're going to focus on the morphing grid. It is the key point to everything. So what we're going to do is have it so that our team can access the morphing grid directly. They can literally dive into the morphing grid to access past Ranger powers, and to also learn more about this master key, this their big access point to gain ultimate power.
I think this is also overall boosts the villain side of the equation, because at first I would imagine the prince wants really nothing to do with this planet except escape, as we decided he's stuck in the lower orbit and whatnot. But as he explores the planet with the monsters and such, he also maybe discovers that there is a place where you can get the skeleton key. And what else could bring him to power, to the first seat of power, than literally handing over like the skeleton key to this big fucking thing to his father? Obviously, it would boost his place much more than any conquest would ever would. So he had more personal stakes in the matter after that fact, I think.
You're on the right page there, Nick. You're on the right page there, Theo. I like where you're thinking with this. Yes. And bear in mind, something that Zordon said way back in Mighty Morphing that can still apply today, just altered a little bit. He originally said that the morphing grid was maintained by the balance and the battle between him and Zed. Well, let's expand upon that a little bit and just be the balance of good, the battle against good and evil. That the morphing grid exists as long as the balance of good and evil exists. So the morphing grid is not as safe and clean as you would think. There are going to be evils inside the morphing grid that the Rangers are going to have to contend with. This allows us to bring back past villains, have monsters escape from the morphing grid. You know, we can recreate stuff.
It also answers the question of why didn't anyone use this sooner? The answer to it is I had used the analogy of deep sea diving. Like the deeper into
you can find treasures. Yeah, you can find treasures, but also you might find just find monsters that you cannot deal with.
Yeah. I think we've all seen footage of the kind of life forms that exist deep in the ocean and how fucking weird they are.
Ugh, yeah.
And if you want an example of how diving into the morphing grid is a dangerous thing, of all things I have to bring this up, go back to Once a Ranger. Remember when Alpha had to dive into the morphing grid to fix it? Remember how he was freaking out because it was going nuts. What if that wasn't just a glitch in the morphing grid or the effect of Thrax and his crew attacking it? What if that was just the morphing grid in general?
Yeah,
it's dangerous to go directly into the morphing grid like that.
It especially allows us to tie into the pirate theme, because obviously pirates are good at navigating the seas, but there was a certain reverence that most sailors are going to have for the open ocean, that you have to treat it with a deal of respect, or it could bite you in the ass and you get stuck in a maelstrom, or stuck with the numerous superstitions wanting to have your head on a plate and take your ship with it.
Us, it's literally in the name. Like, think about it. It's a morphing grid. What does it do? It morphs all the time, constantly, every second. It morphs and changes and adjusts, and it's just a chaos. It's chaos.
Yeah. No, you're not wrong.
Much like the currents in the open sea.
Yeah.
Because it's difficult to predict that kind of things. You could have nice calm waters one day, and then the next you're trying to escape a maelstrom. But,
And because the morphing grid will exist outside of space and time, this is how you could explain how they can get access to powers such as SPD and RPM.
or Die Range or any of the other ones that were Japan exclusive for the longest time.
Yeah.
Because of the fact that it exists outside of space and time, it is borrowing upon powers from other teams that probably weren't from Earth, probably weren't even from the same dimension, since the grid doesn't care about that.
Yeah, the grid just exists as long as there is a battle between good and evil,
Mm-hmm.
and battle between good and evil happen in every universe pertaining more both Sentai and Power Rangers itself. Like all of this, like you can even use this to, if you really want to be the Sentai purist, you can use that in order to give callbacks to fucking Sentai itself. Like, oh, look at this cool thing. I like this cool thing. And it would not feel jarring because you know it's not the same universe. It's from a different universe. It's fine.
Mm-hmm. Now,
Exactly.
as far as the mentor, obviously, Gosei's getting thrown out the window.
Yep.
Yeah.
Sorry, Linkara, no giant tiki head for you.
Mm-hmm.
Out the window, no, he's going to get shot by the great horse.
But we had posited the idea of two mentor figures, both of whom act as kind of opposite ends of a spectrum.
Get our yin and yang thing going.
Yeah. One of them is a representative of the very straight-laced kind of mentor. The other is more of the rules are meant to be bent kind of attitude, and both of them coming to blows with each other as much as their own team.
Yeah. Here's the way I would suggest it. Have them arrive with the rogue mentor, someone from Onyx, most likely, who plays underhanded like that, but doesn't like the idea of a greater. He's not evil. He just doesn't like the idea of playing by the rules. Have the straight-laced mentor be someone from Earth. Maybe a former Ranger if you really want to push your luck on that. But at the very least, someone who maybe a former mentor in themselves.
Or former mentor, or maybe I'm going to throw this out there. We don't have to go with it. A side character who wasn't a mentor but was closely associated to the Ranger, that they become the mentor here as a show of progression of their character.
If I really wanted to, I'd probably have it. As far as the straight-laced, if there's any representative that you could use for that, it'd probably be Lightspeed, because they're still going to be around.
Oh.
But that's
So either Captain Stannon or Miss Fairweather.
Yeah. As tempting as it would be to have the mentor be Carter Grayson, I don't think I could get away with that.
Yeah.
What I would go with, however, is if by some miracle you can get him in, and well, they got him in for Samurai, so it's not off the table. Have Bulk work directly with them. You know, finally crossing that threshold.
Yeah, they tried to kind of do that, but the only problem with Samurai was that they brought him in late, so he couldn't have. It wasn't until like the second season until we started. directly interacting with the Rangers. Here, have him be there from day one, helping the Rangers out, and actually be, you know, you can still have your comedic moments because, I mean, it's Bulk. If you're not doing something silly with him, you're doing it wrong.
Yeah.
But have
Yeah.
him be somebody who's been through everything and recognizing this as a threat on the level of Countdown to Destruction, he knows it's now time to put up or shut up.
Mhm.
Like, and not to mention, he probably has enough connections where at one point one of the Rangers is literally asked, okay, basically asks him like how he knows so much, or if they get a legal issue, what's going on. He just makes a slight offhand reference to Skull. It's just, yeah, he has connections now, and it could be other characters we see throughout the series.
We know that in Forever Red, he was a direct connecting line to help reach Tommy. So, needless to say, he's probably connected with a few past Rangers in history. And through Tommy, he's probably made a lot more connections. So he probably knows a lot more than a lot of others do.
Yeah.
Like that, heck, for all we know, like we could see him on the phone with like the Silver Guardians or something.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we don't know.
That, and he is because of that one incident in Zeo, he is technically a hero.
Even though he doesn't remember.
He may not remember, but if you want to call back to that, they can remember him. But
I'm sold on that. Let's go.
But I would the big reason for this kind of thing is in order to illustrate the whole thing with the keys, I would go with the idea that a kind of convergent design where the key-based thing was devised when experiments with grid diving became a thing. They had our Troy had made it himself during the whole thing on Onyx, and then copied it. Whereas the one that Orion has is one that Tommy had designed himself. Not knowing either side's development, just naturally converging on the same point.
I mean, the morphing grid works like that. You know, developing similar technology just happens to work out that way. You could see that playing out. The morphing grid will just do that to you.
Mm-hmm. I will note that if by some miracle you're able to get any of the originals, there is one thing. Any of the originals from the OG Mighty Morphin, there is one thing I'd like to. I would want to do, just as not only a callback but also a closing the door on one thing. There was once a Ranger came out, there was a bit of a gag I had with a friend of mine of a missed opportunity to ask, so how's Rita? Because someone going from a worldwide threat to being a parent, the child status notwithstanding, we're not getting into that, and then being the protector of all good magic. There is a scene in my head of her getting into a call with probably Tommy, and them having a conversation about where things have gone since the days that they had worked together. A conversation that has multiple levels of awkward because of all of that baggage, but a conversation that would be had. And if you don't even have to have it where they're both in the same room, you could have it as the equivalent of a phone conversation. Probably make it.
Just imagine the most awkward phone call you could ever have. It's just like,
Yeah,
so
just make it a video
how's
call.
things? How's things? All right. How are yours?
Yeah.
That-
And well, part of the reason to be awkward is one because of the whole control thing that she did back then, and two, they probably haven't spoken to each other in say 20 years.
Yeah, no, it fits. It fits the whole. You can have a few callbacks too in that sort of sense as well.
Mhm. And obviously, you have the monster of the week. You have the escalation. I would not do the you've gained a new power kind of stuff. The reason new mechs and the like are being developed is one, Earth has had the blueprints to make mechs for decades now. At this point,
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
but also the fact that as things go on, they're constantly developing new tech to deal with this threat.
Or you could make it a consequence of the grid diving.
Mhm.
That they're because of the lessons they're learning, because of the what they're learning about the Rangers' past, the keys get basically kind of activated. It won't be a grand power like Gokaiger, but it'll be the keys accepting them as an understanding of their part of the grid, and thus being able to access more of its abilities.
Mhm. A little of column A and a little of column B.
Yeah.
And there's a few concepts that were in the original Gokaiger that I wouldn't be opposed to visiting. One of them is I forget his name, but he was Joe's superior who got turned into a cyborg.
Sid Senpai.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I would still keep that kind of thing. Just have it that he was somebody who was left behind on Onyx, and when they had their breakout, he got stuck.
He sacrificed himself so that the others could get away, and now he's been turned into their enemy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Cardi Zork. I would still keep that. There is one other character that was a major point of the original Gokaiger that I'd want to do some equivalent to, because obviously there's been the tradition of evil rangers, and we have one big one we can draw upon within Gokaiger, even if he isn't a ranger per se. Bosco.
I had a feeling you were bringing him up.
Now, obviously in Gokaiger, he was part of Aka Red's crew who stabbed the others in the back. I would go with the idea that the prince has been having such a rough time of it that he decides, my commanders aren't being much help, so I need to call in a Corsair. A Corsair and give him a letter of marque, the equivalent thereof. Which, for those unaware, the letter of marque was how you had the legal form of piracy, basically saying, okay, you can fuck shit up, but fuck their shit up. You do that, we look the other way.
Yeah. It's basic. It's you don't touch my shit, I don't touch your shit agreement.
Mm-hmm. But when it comes to our equivalent to Bosco, he is a Corsair who is aware of the grid and the like, through his own means, and also overhearing stuff at Onyx. And I would go with the notion that even though he's working with Imperium, they do not trust him at all. Like, he is trusted as far as they can throw him because they're thinking, okay, how long is it before he tries to screw us over? Because even though he's
Ooh,
go ahead,
I'm gonna throw out a wild card for you.
shoot.
Have him be someone who found his way from the Lost Galaxy. Maybe has been brainwashed by a cat in mutiny.
I would go with him. I would go with him being an associate, or actually an even better approach. He pulled a coup.
Ooh, yeah. I mean,
So
Cat
he
Mutiny
was a-
already fits the pirate theme anyway. It'll be a perfect fit.
Mhm.
Well, here's the thing. Captain Mutiny's, by the time this happens, remember, at the end of Lost Galaxy, Mutiny was destroyed by Chikina, so whatever forces he had left, he took over.
There you go. I like that.
Yeah, it could just as well be that he had worked with Drakina or somebody else. The point is, he had worked as an underling at one point, and until he took his shot and basically stole that person's goods, which is how he's able to get. Which was the main thing he took out of it, was being able to access that monster form that he has. I know it's called armored form in the wiki, but I was just using that as a general sense. I see Dragon saying bring back Tommy's clone. I am not doing that. That is a stupid idea, and I do not like doing clones unless I absolutely have to.
Yeah, let's not touch that.
Yes. Actually, on the topic of clones, I want to ask this with our version of Bosco. Would he be able to access the morphing grid to summon clones? Like copies of the Rangers?
That's what his power is going to be. It won't be clones, but it'll be simulacrums. That's what Bosco basically did, was he was able to summon simulacrums of extra Rangers using that trumpet. It may not be the same device, but I think something like that would be a good idea for him to summon simulacrums of extra Rangers.
And I think like they had, like, by the time if we're going to keep with the idea he was part of Mutiny's crew, by that point, Mutiny's probably had, by the time of Mutiny's defeat, there was so much stuff there. Our Bosco probably has enough time to mess around with stuff. It wouldn't be surprised if he accessed the grid at some point. So
seeing the Lost Galaxy Rangers might have inspired him to look into it. Like, how did they get those kind of powers? How did that happen? And then he starts researching it and accesses it. Yeah. Not a stretch.
I would add one catch when it comes to his simulacrums.
Mm-hmm.
There's a time limit. He can only maintain those simulacrums for, let's say, 30 seconds.
You might have to go a little longer than that, considering some of the fight scenes that they have involving that. I would say
5 minutes.
Five minutes
Mhm.
would be probably
5 minutes, yeah.
the
5
idea.
minutes is good.
Like,
mean,
the
it's good.
standard for these type of things usually are 5 minutes, but we can also add the fact that the more damage the simulacrums take, the shorter the length.
I don't think that's necessary. That's gimmicking gimmicks.
Mm,
Well, I would think it's more of an explanation other than, like, is there another explanation we can give for when they would destroy them, revert in going with the Go? I'm going to say this because this is the Gokaiger footage. When the simulacrums would revert back to their key form.
It could just. The approach I'm going with is that he's pulling a hacking trick, much like RJ did with the sunglasses. It's just that his trick is because it's not involving a direct transformation, it is very hacked together. It's not stable.
yeah, it being unstable could function as a good explanation
Mm-hmm.
as to why it goes the way it does.
You know, much in the same way when Adam was transforming using a busted morpher, it kept cutting in and out. it's the
Yep.
same. It would be under the same principle. And the thing is that it is obviously Bosco would have his own agenda, which is primarily built around wanting to once he learns about the Master Key, he wants that for himself, along with everybody else's keys if he can help it.
Oh yeah, ambitious person, obviously. Ambitious people will always want to be ambitious, especially if they're on the evil side. That's kind of like part of the course. I think the one of the most interesting parts to me personally about the bad guy side of the situation is that maybe we could even see some sort of development on the evil villain side. Like usually they're fairly static. Like if we're watching the Power Rangers, from what I remember, they're fairly static as characters. Maybe to switch it up this time around, the fact that this villain is so bad isn't because he has some overwhelming super armada or whatever, or like some big. He starts off as a spoiled brat, but he ends up being like the biggest threat the Rangers could ever. Something.
We kind of sidestepped the spoiled brat issue.
Yeah. Well, I mean, somewhat spoiled. He starts somewhat spoiled, but not super spoiled.
He's going to be more disassociated. He's just going to be like, oh, just another backwater planet for me to conquer. But then as he keeps losing, he starts getting more focused. He's like, okay, now this is starting to piss me off. Let's deal with this shit.
Yeah, like the fact that he develops in his understanding powers, like maybe there's some sort of something there that was kind of pushed down because he had no challenge whatsoever doing anything, and that sort of like thrill of it all is what pushes him to be like the biggest threat they could possibly encounter.
And then by the end, you could also tease the arrival of the Emperor. Now he's like, okay, now I've got to deal with this before my dad gets here and set everything up.
And I know with the original setup that they had, there was the contrast between Warsgill having that petulant attitude and Daramas being the voice of reason who would go behind the prince's back if it meant fulfilling the mission of conquering Earth. The approach I would go with instead is Daramas is still acting as the rock, still acting as the strategist, but in reality, his loyalty is not to Gil. His loyalty is to the Emperor. He was just there to essentially act as a judge and also as a set of eyes just in case. Daramas's attitude throughout was more about being very focused on the mission at hand. And because of that focus on the mission, the way he sees how things are going is, despite the prince insisting he can do it with the current forces that he has, he's like, no, we need to call in the main force, which would mean calling in the Emperor.
Maybe a couple times we'll see Daramas try to contact the Emperor, but Wars cuts him off. It's like, no, you are not you're not talking to Dad.
Mm-hmm.
And then finally one day he sneaks a call through, and that's when the Emperor starts, or no, better yet, the Emperor finds out on his own anyway, and then berates Daramas for like, why didn't you call me? I tried, Your Excellency.
Mm-hmm. And I'd say the beration would be on not only not calling him about this kind of threat and that kind of power, but also the whole thing of him hiring a Corsair. And more specifically, hiring a Corsair like Bosco, who I am doubling and tripling down on the whole nobody trusts Bosco. He's very good at his job, but everybody knows he is a complete bastard. Who was like like I would go with the idea that yeah, even though he's a Corsair, the only reason he's that is because he has a bounty on his head that is yes. The only reason they don't put a number on his bounty is because the number got too high.
It's not even dead or alive. It's just dead.
But because of the fact that he's a Corsair, they can't touch him.
And like the few times he knows it, so he uses that to get in their faces.
Yeah, he is arrogant about it. He shoves it in their face. That he's like, yes, I know you want to kill me so bad, but you can't. So you're just gonna have to live with that.
Mm-hmm. Because I'd really want to hammer home the fact that Basco is kind of meant to be the big heat magnet of this kind of story. You know, both if there's one thing that everybody can agree on, it's fuck that guy. Like the Imperium doesn't like him because the pain in the ass who stabs them in the back, and they can't do anything about it because of the letter of marque. Obviously, Troy and his crew don't like him because he stabbed them in the back.
Backstabs.
He is an equal opportunity backstabber. In fact, oh god, I just realized what I've dipped into. John, he is better than you, and you know it.
Someone give him a burgundy scarf.
Oh, have you seen how Basco dressed? It's not far off.
No, it really isn't. No, it really isn't.
All I can ask is his actor from Long Island?
To all of our non-wrestling fans, look up the name Maxwell Jacob Friedman, MJF, and you will understand immediately what we're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to the Disneyland of the world. That's still my favorite line of his.
Yeah. And when it obviously with the culmination, that's where you'd have the whole legendary battle kind of moment. I would say the way to do that is not only having, instead of having it just be these stragglers like they did originally, I would have it that that Mavro just even with a lot of these ships, no, they're not destroyed by the thousands like it was the source material, but instead the defense mechanisms have been reinforced. So him and his detachment are stuck on Earth too. He can't call in his armada to just blow the whole place up.
Yeah, well, I think what we could do is have a small subset of ships get past the barrier, because we need to have that invasion moment. We need to have that moment where they invade, but not the entire force like that. Just a small subset that gets past the defenses and goes on the attack. The Rangers work together to take them out, but yet a whole force of ground troops do make it onto Earth. And then have it be that at this point, since it's near the end of the season, have the Rangers, through all of their grid diving, tap into the morphing grid and summon, and actually using a little bit of Bosco's tech, being able to summon simulacrums of all the past Rangers to have that legendary battle.
Mm-hmm.
I'm fine with that.
And hell, you can even have the scene where they jet off into lights in the sky, having this be them returning to the grid and reinforcing the defense systems.
Yeah. And as far as if we can get access to some of the old suits, if you want to have a way to sneak in sneak in Master Rider back into the Mythos, that's one way how you can do it. I think it'd be tricky to get the suit all the way out to New Zealand, but that's something that could be done, since again, the grid's outside space and time. But I would say in the aftermath of it, as tempting as it would be to just have everything go back to relative normal, I would actually go with the idea that the crew decides to leave Earth and head out into the stars, and Orion joins them.
Mm-hmm.
Because seeing how there's all these different worlds that humans have been on, he wants to see what's out there.
Plus, you know that the Imperium would be out there still. There's probably still stragglers they got to deal with, so go out there and make sure to clean up the mess.
I would, given the whole Empire thing that we've gone with, I would say this is the equivalent of you managed to take out the Roman Empire, but now you have to deal with all the different people in the Holy Roman Empire that want to be the next emperor.
God
Exactly.
damn it.
And
God damn it, how many times have I told you fuckers to be thorough with your destruction of empires?
because there's this motif in a lot of fiction that you take out the emperor and everything else goes with it, but empires are massive, and when you had the end of the Roman Empire, you had successor empires. When in something like BattleTech, when the Star League collapsed, you had the successor states arguing about who's sitting on that throne of First Lord. And it took them over 200 years to figure out, okay, nobody's sitting on that throne. But even if the emperor is taken out, you have a lot of people who are gunning for that seat who are declaring themselves emperor and having their own fiefdoms in what was Imperium territory. So the problem isn't automatically solved by taking out the emperor, just the worst of it.
Plus, they probably want to go back and free their own worlds from whatever occupation the Imperium still has left there.
Mm-hmm. And through that, if you want to follow up the story, you can have it that there's pirate kingdoms or micro-states. I won't use pirate kingdoms for this because that's doubling down, but bandit kingdoms, essentially. Somebody props up on some old Imperium base and declares themselves the ruler of that area.
Yeah.
I mentioned before my love for Riku Sanjo, and this is definitely a Riku Sanjo move of this story is over, but their story isn't. Because if I'm gonna steal, I may as well steal from the best.
Hey, you're not stealing, you're being inspired from. For many creators, that's a badge of honor. At least it should be.
Rick, that's the joke.
Sorry, I'm glaring off to a picture of a friend of mine.
But regardless with that, I would go. I know it'd be tempting to go with the whole what about Robo Knight? Oh, what about Robo Knight? We killed off any use of Ghost Sages, so we're not doing the Robo Knight. We're not doing the Dark Robo Knight. We're not doing the whatever that DBZ moment was, or having him suddenly show up and give no explanation whatsoever.
What was it? Something, do not pass go, do not collect $1 million, you don't participate.
Mm-hmm. And in in that same vein, with this kind of thing, we have an arc of this massive Armada thread. We have the callbacks, and there's plenty of callbacks that can be done, and not all of them necessarily need to have past actors come in. That I think would be considered a luxury good.
Yeah, at the very least, you wouldn't have to fly all of them out. You could have some from New Zealand, like have a Ninja Storm themed episode where you can have the old sensei show up for one episode. I mean, you had him in Samurai, for fuck's sake.
Mm-hmm.
I still find that funny. Like, they had the master from Ninja Storm in Samurai, and they didn't use him for Megaforce. Fucking Christ.
So
and I'm gonna say this, like, there's some that they had in the show that makes sense. Like, they had Casey, Jungle Fury Red's actor. He was a writer on the show. He was already under contract. Okay, he could come back. That one kind of made sense.
Yeah, that was a good one too.
Yeah.
So let me posit something as before we wrap up. So I would like to go into the series that were filmed in New Zealand and how you do a callback mini arc with those, starting with Samurai.
Well, Samurai is the easiest because even in Megaforce itself, they had Jaden and Mentor G there, so they could do that episode. Not too hard to redo something like that. Though, I kind of wish they could get a Lorne back instead and do what they kind of did in Gokaiger, because I think it would make more sense. Plus, give Lorne some fucking development, something that only the comics managed to do.
I will admit, one concept I was thinking of is one of the commanders stumbling upon a broken off piece of Uramasa and thinking, oh, this is a powerful relic. I'll use this against the Rangers, and not realizing what he is messing with.
Accidentally opens up a portal to the Zanzu River, and Octoroo shows up.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, the old fucker. Yep.
Because they have Gokaiger footage of Octoroo. Very easy to set that up.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I would I'm going with the old motif of the sword the malice possessed sword that controls its wielder.
And that's the other thing, like, there is a swordsman monster, so they can easily do it with that.
But as far as using RPM, since RPM has more or less been established to be in another universe, I'd actually go with the idea that they end up in RPM's universe due to a mishap during a grid dive.
Yeah.
Grid dive goes wrong, and I would say, like, we have a person on the team established as the guy who's really in charge of the dives?
That would probably be a Red.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, in that case, I would, or at least like experience that, either Colonel Truman or Dr. K.
Maybe even both. Maybe Colonel Truman finds them out in the desert and leads them back to their command base, and have Dr. K waiting for them to help them get back.
Mm-hmm. And considering, like, and because we have Dr. K and this is post-season, we'll probably get a cameo from Ziggy, but it's primarily, I would say, whoever's in charge with the Voyagers of the deep dives, and Dr. K, given how Dr. K created the biofield itself, like, she would have.
She didn't create it; she just discovered it in that universe.
She discovered it,
Yeah.
but she created a lot of the tech. Though you could use that to say she established the creation of the RC mech that they ended up using in Gokaiger.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Now, as far as Jungle Fury, I'd say that'd be a relatively easy one to work with, since I believe there was a martial arts reference with the Gokaiger footage.
They had one. They did. That also could be something they could pull, like, could be a deep dive gone wrong, actually.
Oh.
No, I think actually that one, they should keep relatively similar to what they did in Megaforce, because I think that was a good episode. And having some of the Rangers needing to learn to tap into their own personal animal spirits, well, you could change things up a little bit. It probably wouldn't be that far off.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Just don't use the whole Rangers never let go of their weapons bullshit.
Yeah. Operation Overdrive would be the trickier one, given all of the baggage with that.
Doctor.
I would just say have Andrew Hartman show up and basically be on a hunt for a relic.
Mm-hmm. In other words, the relic hunt is still there. It's just he happened to get the same tip.
Yeah.
Or it's like he realizes it's bad, but he can't contact, but he's unable to get Mac for some reason. Like Mac's on his own, I think. So he decides to pull a favor and request their assistance.
Yeah, he recognizes the Ranger suits. He realizes it's not that far different from his own suits, and just goes with that.
Yeah.
Like, I can trust you guys.
As far as Mystic Force, I know I made that joke about Rita having that conversation. If that's the story where you could do that,
have her be the one to help teach them about using magic.
Mm-hmm. SPD would be another tricky one. I think that would be the only way I could see that being done is the dive mishap again.
Yeah. Instead of them going into the world of SPD, have them pull somebody out.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe have them accidentally grab Doggy Kruger.
Yeah.
So that way you can just have John Tui do a voiceover.
John Tui do a voiceover, or, and this is one thing, like maybe at this point they have. I want to know something. The defense grid or whatever it is that we're using for the Earth, and have multiple things. Do they have agents that are aliens or not?
Considering that hasn't been established yet, I mean, Space Patrol Alpha didn't even exist until Once and Forever, so I would say this will just be Doggy recognizing things from the past.
Well, I was thinking, no, let me finish this. If not that, Cat Manx. I'm thinking.
If you can get Michelle Langstone back for an episode, I don't see why not.
Yeah, because I was thinking, like, what I was looking at is, given how they probably used, like, KR-35, like, having, like, Cat Manx, it would have to be something. They would have to do some makeup effects to make her look younger.
I got an idea. I'm going to take your idea and run with it. Let's say that because of a malfunction at a grid dive, not only did Cat Manx get pulled out from the grid, but it caused a slight malfunction in the security system, in the defense system, and thus they needed someone to fix it before the Imperium catches on, and Manx just happens to be the perfect person for the job because she's a tech expert.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. And I would say now, as far as Dino Thunder, I know it'd be tempting to bring in Dr. O for that kind of thing.
I'm thinking either Haley or Mercer.
I had a different idea.
If not them, Ethan. But I'm trying to stick away from bringing the tech guys in.
I was actually thinking of bringing in Trent.
Oh. Go on.
Because I think you could use this as an opportunity to have Trent go full circle, given the very conflicted approach he had throughout Dino Thunder, and finally show a way of showing that he's made peace with what happened back then.
His would probably take. I think you could have him take place if you're bringing in Trent. It has to be after our 6 Rangers introduced, and have him pass on some knowledge to our 6th.
Yeah,
which makes sense because it's probably at a time where narratively, for the episode, a conflict has happened, and Orion is having some self-doubts given how strong the bond is between the core five. Trent comes in, gives us experience, and it's through that they get the combo mech.
Mm-hmm. And as far as Ninja Storm, bringing in Sensei is an easy approach.
Yeah.
Sensei, Cam, probably with him because kids.
It'd be tricky. I mean, bear in mind, we're trying to be careful with the budget, so flying in too many past actors who aren't already in New Zealand will be tricky. But having in Sensei Watanabe passing along some platitudes wouldn't be a bad idea.
And if
the only reason I'm bringing up Cam is his actor I know is from Singapore, and I know it's much closer to New Zealand compared to the United States.
A flight's still a flight.
Yeah,
A flight's still a flight. What you could do though is have him on a video call and have him like report in, or maybe offer some tips and tech advice.
Or if I wanted to pull a as a kind of advanced note with what Bosco is doing, possibly have it that Cam has figured out a way to project his ranger form outside of himself, as a bit of a nod to the fact that no one ever saw what Shurikenja actually looked like.
Well, it actually would make sense because considering the fact he's made Cybercam, he evolved on it.
Oh yeah.
And that actually could be used as the basis for what Bosco's using.
It's not a basis per se, but it's a way of
Connecting the two.
Yeah.
A way of signposting the concept more than anything else.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that it is possible to have this sort of remote projection. And also a way to have a bit of an inside joke. Because introducing anybody from either the Wind or Thunder Academies, I don't think would quite fit.
No.
But I mainly wanted to cover the ones that were in that New Zealand period.
Yeah.
And if you want to do, I was gonna say you could use this to do previews of future ones, but I wouldn't go with that, because obviously nobody can see the future except me sometimes, apparently.
The only thing you could possibly do is have like the very end, since by then they would probably already have been past the planning stages, have someone mention Dr. Morgan from Dino Charge.
Morgan, maybe have a couple of the actors in like civilian roles.
If they've gotten that far, it's a hard call on that one, but I would say at the very least have a name drop.
Now,
Name drop? Oh, wait, correct me if I'm wrong on this. My apologies, but Chase, Dino Charge Black, is his actor a native to New Zealand?
Yes.
Like, maybe have him cameo, but that's just a stretch.
Yeah. Now, there is one other thing I wanted to dip into. Suppose, hypothetically, Toei put their foot down and says you have to use the Decade crossover footage as well.
Thought they would, but hey, let's play ball here.
Yeah. Now, ideally, I would say no, we're not doing that. But suppose you're in a situation where that footage has to be used. We can't obviously introduce Kamen Rider into this or call it that. So I think how would you introduce it? Like another Corsair that's only there for a short time, or something else?
Well, he would be, I would say, since we're already bringing in an Edenoidian, let's have it be that since she's a princess, there would obviously be a prince. Have him be like her fiance, and he be the inheritor of the Masked Rider. Like, let's go full ham on this. But instead of it being an ignorant idiot, this is somebody who's done their homework and maybe is just a bit arrogant. Because obviously you're gonna carry that arrogance of Decade. Have him be someone who's arrogant and just full of himself, but still respects, you know, the heroics of the Rangers.
Mm-hmm. I wouldn't say he's
Wait.
Go.
Actually, scratch that. Decade didn't have an episode crossover. He only crossed over with Go. You're talking Samurai.
Yeah, that was what I was confused about because I remember that was the
only
episode.
Yeah, my bad. I think I got them crosswired.
Yeah, that happened in Samurai. That happened in Shinkenger, not in Gokaiger.
I was trying to figure that out.
The only crossover Gokaiger had was during the later movies.
It was the later movies, and even it was Gavon. They wouldn't touch that until Beast Morphers.
And although truth be told, if I wanted to sneak in Gavon, that'd actually be easier since we're dealing with interplanetary stuff as is.
Yeah, but even then, that's a movie that they use, so that wouldn't work well either.
Mm-hmm.
Not to mention that'd be a lot more money they would have to Saban would have to play. Yeah, like there's a reason why they up throughout the franchise, there's only a handful, like on a single hand, they use actual footage from a movie. And it was because there was so much more money they had to put out.
Yeah. So I think what's established with this is that there was a way to do it. It just involves having somebody who isn't slavish to the source material.
Yeah. Take inspiration from it, but not a direct translation per se.
Mm-hmm. And admittedly, I just realized there's one other thing that we haven't addressed that's been a staple in Rangers, but not necessarily a staple in Sentai, except for the couple times that they dipped into it, which I'm not counting. And that is how you would have some variety of a battleizer.
Well, technically we do have that. It just wasn't the red that got it. We had gold mode.
And technically red did, but that was 10 years too late.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There would have been no way for them to adapt that in time. So, no, we don't have to do that here.
Yeah, but operating under the assumption that we do.
I would say keep it as it is, but instead of it being the faces of all the 6 that came before, replace them with the corresponding reds. It's
actually I've got a bet. I think I may have an alternative.
Mm-hmm.
Cast your mind back to when we did that reconstruction of Decade and how we changed Decade Complete.
Mm-hmm.
I am thinking of doing something in the same vein. If you recall, the change we did to Decade Complete was that it just allowed Decade to access the more advanced forms of the previous riders, and up to that point, even if he had the cards, he couldn't. This would go under a similar principle.
So basically, allow him to access other battleizers.
Yes.
I could see that. The only thing I do have a question on that because I might be thinking too much into this, but it is shown. We do have footage that near the end they are able to obtain the power-up forms for the Rangers. We even see that in the technical crossover. I mean, the Dino Thunder fight where they went to Operate mode, the Super Dino mode. I don't know about that. But I get where you're coming from.
I think you're right. You are looking too much into it. But the point is that with that you essentially have a framework that can be built around. And I know we didn't cover individual story arcs, but that's not something that these constructions or reconstructions are really covering. It's always about the broad perspectives. And with this, you have a framework that can be built around. If you want to integrate some bits of conflict among the characters, there's ways to do it. So there are certainly plenty of flaws you could work with. I would pay good money to have a scene of our Green having a debate in a room where you have imagine the three Greens sitting around a round table, and the camera is going around in a circle between them each time one of them speaks.
Kind of like something out of that 70s show.
Yeah.
Sorry, Monk, you were glitching a little bit on my end. What was it about the Greens?
We were talking about having like several of them sitting around a table and have the camera go back and forth, that 70s show style.
Mm-hmm.
Arguing over like a certain idea.
Yeah.
That's actually kind of cute, honestly. I like it.
It would work, but if they could bring Ziggy back for a single thing, just him and then whoever is the equivalent for the team, just go at it.
Yeah.
Dr. K in the background, exasperated.
The point is, Triforians are three people in one, and I'd want to just flip that on its head. And
Shades, I'm now imagining him doing this, but it's similar to my next life as a villainess.
Oh God.
You know what I'm talking about.
Yes, I do.
Yes.
But with that said, that's going to wrap it for this particular episode of GeekWatch. We will be back here next week with a bit of shenanigans involving life paths of a game that isn't quite out yet, but is semi-out. And later tonight, I will be beginning my run of FF7 Remake, since Rebirth is finally getting a PC version, so I'm going to be doing some catch-up. So keep an eye out for all of that. But until then, on behalf of the good brothers present and not present, my name is Mildra, I am your gaming monk, and join the watch!
遅い上洛が上長年関税を忘年関税を年々重心期年々不利し関税 新規年々売りし関税をすごいすごいすご物